Hi, and welcome to our channel. This is the Teacup Brigade. This month I wanted to talk about the Magical Read-a-thon that had been going on this April. I have been participating in it. I wanted to make a video earlier this month, but it just didn't pan out. So the Magical Read-a-thon is created by Book Roast. Basically, the idea is that for this read-a-thon, you are a student at a magical university. So you get to create a character, join a guild, and depending on which calling you choose, you have to take classes. So to complete your classes, you have to complete reading prompts. And to join a guild, there is a very quick, very easy 5-question quiz which will determine what guild you join. Just really quickly, I wanted to talk about my character. If you've been following our channel, you'll know that Ivy has been participating in this read-a-thon as well. So you should go and check out her video as well about the Magical Read-a-thon and her character creation. My character that I created, her name is Nebula Core. For the most part, she is mostly human looking, except she has hooves and black goat horns. She has long dark hair like me and silver eyes, not like me, and I chose similar skin type as mine, so she's on the paler side. And the heritage that I chose for my character, they are supposed to have green leopard spots, so I chose to have her kind of have like green freckles because I thought that would be fun. I'll show a picture of what I'm going for. I'm going kind of for an enchantress type of character, like from Dota 2. So she's kind of light and springy. Her name, so I chose Nebula because I really like this name. And I wanted to name, if I ever had a child, Nebula, but my partner does not like that name, so I decided to use it for my character instead. I think it's a cool name, and maybe they'll come around, but whatever. And then Core I got because Core or Kore is another name for Persephone, and Persephone is one of my favorite goddesses. So for the read-a-thon, like I said, you get to choose different kinds of heritages, and one of the heritages that I chose was an earthling. So the earthling characters, I hadn't ever seen these type of characters before, but basically it is a creature that has an affinity for any one of the 4 elements, so earth, air, fire, and water. I chose Nebula to be an earthling. I'll get into it a little more later, but I chose Necromancer for my calling. So I figured an earthling would fit because we're born from the earth and then eventually die and go back to the earth. And like I said before, the earthlings have green leopard spots. Instead of leopard spots, I opted for green freckles. So my inspiration for this character comes from, like I said, Enchantress from Dota 2, but also Persephone, the goddess. I'm really fascinated by that duality of light and dark within one person. I think sometimes we like to think that people can only be one or the other, so I like characters that have kind of both of those within them. So for my character, Nebula, I think she is mostly sunny in nature, but she understands and sees the darkness that is in the world. For the read-a-thon, you can also choose their background, whether or not they are more urban or wilding. I see Nebula more as like a person from like a small village more than like a city person, so I chose wilding for her background. The province that I chose, there are several that you can choose from for your characters. The province I chose was Eartheria. I chose this province because it sounds very foresty in the description, and I thought that suited my character really well. Also, for certification, this is my first year being in this read-a-thon, so I just chose novice because I'm not sure what to put there. Like I said before, my calling for this read-a-thon is Necromancer. I chose this calling because in the description it says you can call up an army of the dead, and I thought that sounded cool, like in Lord of the Rings and Return of the King. I had that kind of in my mind, which is why I want to be a necromancer. Also, I think it sounds very goth, so I chose that one. Like I said before as well, to get into a guild, you have to take a short 5-question quiz. I ended up getting into the Mindwalkers Guild, which is funny because Ivy is also in that guild and that was not planned. We took the quiz separately, so I just thought that was kind of funny that we ended up in the same guild. So the Mindwalkers Guild focuses heavily on magic that is more cognitive in nature. Some Mindwalkers mesh easily with Dreamwalkers, which is a calling. So the Mindwalkers Guild and the Dreamwalkers calling, because the Mindwalkers focus so heavily on the mind, so naturally that would extend to things like your dreams and such. You don't have to be a Dreamwalker if you're a part of the Mindwalkers, obviously, but that's almost kind of like a recommended calling if you're in this guild. And like I said, I chose necromancy. I felt like this meshed well with the Mindwalkers because another exploration for this guild is alternate planes of existence and all things wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. And I figured, you know, like what is death except to exist on a different plane of existence, depending on how you interpret that. You can also choose your lunar phase at birth. I ended up just choosing unnoted because I wasn't sure what the different phases were. I wasn't sure if that was a part of like a previous extension of the read-a-thon. Like I said, this read-a-thon has been going on for a while, so I wasn't sure if that was like something they did last year or the year before, so I just picked unnoted because I didn't want to go back that far. And to do your magical things, you get to have a conduit, so like an item that helps you with your magic-y things. Some conduits are specific to guilds and some are just open to all guilds. I ended up choosing the dagger because that is something only the Mindwalkers are allowed to use as a conduit, so I figured I wanted to use that since no one else outside of our guild would be able to do that. We also get to choose a guild legacy. I'm not sure what that meant. I did a lot of guessing on the guild legacy, but I ended up choosing Shadow Realm, and I almost feel like if you've ever watched JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, I feel like you're kind of choosing a stand, which is fun, but this is almost like part 5 stands, so they're very up for interpretation. But like I said, the guild legacy that I chose was Shadow Realm. So with this guild legacy, it allows you to slip into shadows while still being aware what's going on. So kind of like invisibility, but I guess you become a shadow, so you still get to look around and stuff. You also get to communicate with the shadows in the past or present, but you can't change anything, so you just get to view the past and present as a viewer, and I thought that would be very useful to necromancy. A hypothetical that I came up with was like, well, if you're a necromancer, people will want you to bring possibly people back. So if you were in a dilemma and you're like, should I or should I not bring this person back, you could use your guild legacy to look back and maybe look on their life and see if they were a good person and maybe if you should bring them back. Alternatively, it could also, if this were like a murder mystery, that would be a cool legacy to have, because then you could go back and just see who did it, or just a regular mystery where people don't die. Anyway, so the classes that you need for necromancy, there are 8 books. And I guess that makes sense, because if you're going to be a necromancer, I figured they want you to do a lot of studying. The amount is fine, it's just finding specific books that fit all of these. Reading prompts was a little challenging, but that's the fun of participating in these kinds of things. So the classes that I have, the first one that I have is shapeshifting. For that prompt, I have to read a book that has a creature with claws on the cover. I'm going to be reading Nothing But Blackened Teeth by Cassandra Kah. This book is about a group of thrill-seeking friends that explore an abandoned Japanese Heian era mansion where a malevolent spirit waits for them. The cover is very cool looking. I still haven't read this book, but it's very short, so I'm sure it'll be fine. But yeah, this is actually the last book that I have so far. The way that I approached this readathon was that I am a mood reader, so I just read kind of whatever. I'm not very good at sticking to TBR lists, unfortunately. So what I did was I just read a bunch of books. I actually have read 15 books so far this month, but unfortunately not all of them fit, which is why I'm still working on the shapeshifting class, but we'll get there. That, like I said, like very short book, so it'll be fine. And then for animal studies, which is another class that I have, to complete this class you have to read a quick read. I read Lies Jane Austen Told Me by Julia Wright. I read this as an audiobook and it was really quick. It was fun. It's a romance about a woman who blames a dead author for her troubles and ignores literally any of the messages from said author's novels. Like I said, it was fun, but I had issues with it. I actually ended up giving this book a 1 star, so it wasn't my favorite. It was fun while you were reading it, but then like when you look back on it, it's just like, I don't love this book. The next class that I had was called Inscription. So to complete this course, you had to read an intimidating read. The book I chose for this prompt was Hidden Valley Road by Robert Kolker. So this was an intimidating read because of the subject matter. This is a nonfiction biography that follows the Galvin family. So in this family, there were 12 children born to one set of parents, and out of the 12 children, 6 of them were diagnosed with schizophrenia, and they were diagnosed during the late 60s, early 70s. I'm not like a psychologist or anything, but I don't think we know as much as we want to know about schizophrenia. So growing up in the 60s and 70s, this book just showed how hard it was to have a mental illness during this time. And yeah, it was very sad because there's so little that we know about this illness. It was just very hard on the family altogether. There was some abuse, so it was intimidating in that way, but I thought it was worth reading. So if you're interested in nonfiction and you can stomach something heavy for right now, I would definitely recommend it. The next class I had was Spells and Incantations. So for this challenge, you have to read a collection of short stories. So I read I, Robot by Isaac Asimov. So this is like a classic science fiction collection of short stories that focuses on humanity, technology, and morality. If you've ever heard of the 3 laws of robotics, like robots can't harm humans or let them come to harm, robots must obey humans, and robots must protect their own existence, it comes from this collection of short stories. If you've come into contact with anything science fiction related at all, you've probably seen a reference from one of these short stories. If you've read anything about robots, if you've read anything about clones, they probably reference I, Robot in some way, shape, or form. So it's definitely a classic. I had a hard time reading this one, and I think I might have just been in like the wrong mindset to read this collection because I really didn't enjoy a lot of it. It is a product of its time. There is like some sexism that like really rubbed me the wrong way. So I ended up giving this book 2 stars. I acknowledge that like it's great writing, it's amazing writing, but there was just something that I don't know, I just didn't jive with it. The next class that I had to complete was Conjuration. So for this reading prompt, you have to read a book with a source of light on the cover. So I read Neon Gods by Katie Robert. This one is a very popular one, especially if you're on Book Talk or BookTube or Bookstagram. I see it all over the place, so I picked it up. This is Hades and Persephone's erotic retelling set in modern times. Instead of gods and goddesses, our main characters are 1%ers navigating rich people problems and rich people things. I was unclear about if this was magical or not. There are some things, like if you've read it, and this is not too much of a spoiler, but the character who is Hermes, they can like send messages, but like they can send them, like basically you would tell Hermes like, hey, can you tell so and so this, and then she would go and accurately, using your own voice, like tell someone else that message. But that was the only magical thing that was going on for the most part. I felt like this was almost like, I've never read one, but it felt like a mafia romance, kind of dressed up as Greek mythology, which is fine. It was still fun. But yeah, it was semi-magical, but I'm not sure how magical. And they do reference that there are gods and goddesses. I wasn't sure if like the characters who are Hades and Persephone's are like gods or gods and goddesses, because like in the book it's more of a like whoever is the Hades, that's like a title instead of like my name is Hades. It seemed like his name was Hades. I don't know. It's confusing. It doesn't have to make sense. It just has to be spicy, and it did that, and it was fun. But yeah, basically the plot of this book is that Zeus, who is the head of all the rich people, is a creepy old guy, and he has a habit of leaving a trail of dead wives in his wake. And then Persephone, she just wants to get out of Olympus and be on her own. She unfortunately catches Zeus's eye and must escape his clutches and runs headlong into the arms of Hades. I ended up giving this one a 3-star. It was a lot of fun. Like I said, the main focus is to be spicy, so it doesn't need to be super logical, which is fine. And I do want to read the sequel, which is Electric Idol. But yeah, it was fun. It's a fun time. The next class that I had to complete was Restoration. To complete this reading prompt, you have to read a book featuring healers. So I read The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. This book is about a group therapist who is in the depths of her grief because her husband has recently passed away. So her husband has passed away, and her niece, who is kind of her adoptive daughter / niece, like her parents. So the main character, her sister died, which was her niece's parents. So they die. So the main character adopts her sister's child, and she's now her kind of daughter. Kind of like a godmother, goddaughter situation. Anyway, the main character, Mariana, is called by her goddaughter, Zoe, after Zoe's college roommate and pretty much only friend is murdered. Mariana asserts herself into the murder investigation to find out who is responsible for this killing spree. So this is like an amateur detective story, because even though Mariana is a professional, because she's a group therapist, she is not a detective, and she kind of steps on the toes of the police, and they're just like, stop getting involved in the investigation. She's just like, no, you're doing it wrong. I ended up giving this book 2 stars. I really wanted to like it. I just think the ending kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I do want to read The Silent Patient by the same author. I've heard really good things about that book, and I think a character is referenced in this book that is in The Silent Patient, so that was kind of fun. The next class that I have for the readathon is Lore. So you have to read a book that is mythology inspired. So I'm just now reading that, mythology inspired, and I noticed that I have done this one wrong, but it's fine, I'm still counting it. I read The Monkey King, Journey to the West by Woo Chung-un. I say that I did this wrong because this one is just like full-on mythology and not mythology inspired, but it's fine. We're just gonna move along and pretend that this is fine. It counts. I'm counting it. Anyway, this book, Monkey King, Journey to the West, follows the Monkey King in all of his adventures. The Monkey King is a mythical figure who gains his supernatural powers and wreaks all kind of havoc in heaven and hell. When a Buddhist monk named Tripitaka sets out to retrieve Buddhist scriptures, the Monkey King assists him. The Monkey King is a huge trickster and he's a really fun character. I actually had a really good time reading this, even though this mythology is like ancient. I feel like it still holds up today. And like the translation that I read by Julian Lovell, it's very modernized. It's very easy for modern readers to read because I know the original, it's like a tome to read. Like it's a very big book. And the book that I read was like maybe 300 pages. But anyway, yeah, I would definitely recommend it. It was a 5-star for me. And then the last class that I had for this readathon is Demonology. This reading prompt, I had to read a book with the word shadow in it. So I read Book of Shadows by Kate Tiernan. This is a young adult book about a witch kind of coming into her powers without any prior knowledge of witches or witchcraft. I chose this book because it's included in my Audible subscription and it seemed short. I ended up actually really liking this book. I gave it 4 stars because I really like the story. I thought it was a lot of fun. So the series is going to have, it seems like, more of a paranormal twist. I almost want to say like similar to The Craft, where like they get powers and stuff. They kind of already do in this book, but it's like very subtle. It's not like the main focus of the book. The main focus seems to be more of like the social lives of the characters, but it's still like entertaining. So like as an adult reading this book about high school age kids, like I still really genuinely enjoyed it. Something that also really surprised me about this book was that it had like actual like Wicca practices and beliefs in it. I figured this was going to be more of like a Harry Potter situation, like witch and wizards kind of thing, which is fine, but I was surprised by how much the book included that sort of thing. So like the author either is like a practitioner of Wicca or she did a lot of research, and it just seemed really cool for that to come through. After reading this, it makes me kind of wish that there were more pagan fiction or Wiccan fiction where the characters were just Wiccan and pagan, but it wasn't necessarily a fantasy. So like just a contemporary book with Wiccan or pagan characters. So if you have any recommendations on a book such as that, I would love it. But yeah, that is my wrap up so far for the Magical Read-a-thon, almost, because I still have to finish Nothing But Black and Teeth, but I have until, today is Thursday, I have until Saturday, so hopefully I'll get that done. I don't even think that one is 200 pages, like it's like 100 something pages, so it's super short, so I'm pretty sure I will be done with that. But let me know if you participated in this readathon. This was the first part. Part 2 is going to be taking place this August, I believe. I am very confused about this readathon, and I don't think it's because of Book Roast at all. I just don't want to go back, and I just didn't want to put a lot of work into this. I just wanted to get the prompts done and then say like, oh, I did it. Yeah, let me know if you participated in this readathon as well. I'd love to hear what callings you chose and what you named your characters and all that fun stuff. Also, because May is going to happen this Sunday, I am going to be participating in the Medieval-a-thon hosted by Holly Hearts Books, and also the Asian Read-a-thon, which is hosted by Read with Cindy. I'm just going to be combining those two because for Medieval-a-thon, to level up your character, it's another character design readathon, which I love, but to level up your character, you just have to read 7 books, and I'm pretty sure it can be any 7 books you want. And then the Asian readathon is only 6 books. So yeah, hopefully I'll be able to make a video before the end of May talking about that. I'll have, like I said, like I'm a mood reader, so I'll have a somewhat TBR that I can show you guys. But yeah, thank you for watching and have a great day.